Hello everyone, my name is Uno. Welcome to Storytelling. Today I'll be reading about Puss in Boots. Chapter 1, The Clever Cat. Once there was a poor miller who had 3 sons. When he died, he left them all he had in the world, his mill, his donkey, and his orange tabby cat. Before anyone could blink, the eldest son took the mill, the middle one grabbed the donkey. Tom, the youngest one, was left with the cat. "This isn't fair," Tom said. He wasn't impressed. "You two can work together and earn a living," Tom said. "What can I do with Puss? Maybe I could eat him." Later, when they were alone, Puss jumped into Tom's lap. "Don't look so gloomy, master," Puss said. "Things are not as bad as they seem," Puss said, with a purr. "With me, a bag, and a pair of boots, you'll see." Tom was astonished. The cat could talk. "I have one amazing cat," Tom said. And then Tom remembered that he had often seen Puss using incredibly clever tricks and traps to catch rats and mice. So Tom found Puss a leather bag, a shiny pair of boots. He gave him a cloak and a floppy hat too. The cat filled the bag with carrots, and he strutted off into the fields. Chapter 2, Puss Goes to Work. Puss headed for a field where he knew there were rabbits around. Opening the bag, he stretched out on the ground and pretended to be dead. Just as he expected, a foolish young rabbit came bouncing along and sniffed the carrots. As it poked its quivering nose into the bag, Puss pounced. "Got you," he said. Puss was delighted with his catch. He marched straight into the palace and asked to see the king. In front of the throne, Puss bowed low. "Your Royal Highness, I have brought you a gift from my master, the Duke of Carabas." "How amazing! A talking cat," the king said. "How kind! Thank your master very much." The next day, Puss went into the fields again. This time, he hid among some golden corn. He held his bag wide open, and 2 partridges flew straight in. Puss chuckled as he pulled the drawstring tight. Once more, Puss took his catch to the king. Puss became a regular visitor at the palace. Soon, the king began to wonder who the generous duke was. Chapter 3, Princess Arabella. One day, Puss and Tom were walking by the river. Puss knew the king would be driving by his beautiful daughter, Princess Arabella, and he had a plan. When Puss spotted the royal carriage in the distance, he talked to Tom. "Quick! Take off your clothes and jump into the river," he told him. Tom was puzzled, but he trusted Puss, so he jumped in. A minute later, Tom was even more puzzled. First, Puss hid all his clothes under some large stone. Then he started to scream, "Help! Help! Rescue my master!" As the royal coach came by, the king recognized Puss. "Guards! Pull the Duke out of the river at once," he ordered. "Dreadful thieves attacked my master and stole his clothes," Puss explained. "That's terrible," said the king, "but I think I can help." He snapped his fingers and the servant ran up. "Go to the palace and fetch some clothes for the Duke," the king said. All this time, Princess Arabella had been watching from the coach. When he saw Tom in his fine new clothes, she jumped from her seat. He was so handsome. "Duke of Carabas, this is my daughter, Princess Arabella," said the king. Tom bent and kissed the Princess Arabella on the hand. "Oh!" she gasped and smiled. The king insisted that Puss and the Duke join them on their drive. "You go, master," said Puss, pushing Tom forward. "I have some errands to run." Chapter 4, 40 Fields. As the coach rumbled along, He raced ahead. He still had lots to do. Before long, he came to some men mowing a field. Puss clapped his paws. "Listen to me," he shouted. "When the king drives by, tell him this field belongs to the Duke of Carabas, or my master will chop you into minced meat," said the puss. "A talking cat! His master must be a magician," the farmer said. The men didn't dare to refuse. Sure enough, when the king arrived, he asked them who owned the field. "The Duke of Carabas, your highness," the worker said. The men had been so frightened by the puss' threats, they all spoke together. Tom was astonished to hear them tell the king this was his land, but he decided to play along. "This hill always produces a good harvest," he said. Puss ran ahead. In the next field he passed, some men were reaping grain. "Tell the king this field belongs to the Duke of Carabas," he snarled, "or my master will grind to minced meat." Horrified, the men agreed. When the royal coach arrived at the next field, the king got out. The field was twice as big as the one before. "Who owns this field?" he asked some workers. The Duke of Carabas, your highness," he replied. They replied. The puss made the same threat to everyone he met. The king was astonished at how much the land Duke owned. Chapter 5. Castle Ogre. Finally, Puss reached a magnificent castle. It was owned by a fierce ogre, but that didn't stop Puss. This ogre happened to be one of the richest ogres in the country. All the land that had passed on was actually his. The ogre greeted Puss, licking his lips, and invited the cat inside. Puss smiled. He was about to try his biggest trick. "I've heard," he said to the ogre, "that you can change yourself to any creature you want. Could you really turn into an elephant or a lion?" "See for yourself," said the ogre. It was true. In seconds, the ogre turned into a huge lion. Puss was terrified. After growling and roaring for a while, the ogre changed back to himself. "That was the most frightening thing I've ever seen," cried Puss. But I've also been told," he went on, "that you can change to a really small animal, such as a rat or a mouse." "Of course," said the ogre, rather boastfully. "Isn't it impossible?" Puss said. "Just watch." And he did. But as soon as Puss saw the tiny mouse scampering around, he leaped on him and gobbled him up. 6. A royal wedding. By this time, the royal coach has reached the ogre's castle. "Let's visit," said the king, who wanted to see who owned such a grand home. The coach clattering over the drawbridge and flung open the castle doors. "Your Majesty, welcome to the castle of my master, the Duke of Carabas." "You mean you own this splendid castle, as well as all that land?" the king asked Tom in amazement. Trying to hide his surprise, Tom nodded. "Would you mind if I took a look around?" asked the king. "Not at all," said Tom. In the banqueting hall, a grand feast has been laid out for the ogre. The table was crammed with pies, meats, cheese, trifles, and cakes. The king's mouth started to water. "That does look good," he said. "Please, join us for lunch," said Puss. Impressed with the Duke's wonderful castle, Princess Arabela thought he was kind enough to let him share his feast. As the king ate, he noticed that the Duke and his daughter were getting along very well indeed. He realized the Duke would make a perfect prince. By the end of the meal, the king could not keep his thoughts to himself. "Duke of Carabas," he declared, "will you marry my daughter?" "Delighted, sire," Tom said. A wedding was arranged the very next day, and so the miller's youngest son became a prince and lived happily in the castle with his beautiful bride. Tom's brothers were both made earls. As for Puss, He became a lord and never had to chase mice again. Except for fun. The end.